Spain is a diverse country integrated by different contrasting regions that show varying economic and social structures, as well as different languages and historical, political and cultural traditions. According to the current Spanish constitution, the Spanish nation is the common and indivisible homeland of all Spaniards, which is composed of nationalities and regions to which the constitution recognizes and guarantees the right to self-government. The terms nationalities or historical nationalities, though never defined officially, indicate territories whose inhabitants have a strong historically constituted sense of identity, or, more specifically, certain autonomous communities whose statutes of autonomy, the basic institutional legislation, recognizes their historical and cultural identity. In Spanish jurisprudence, the term nationality appears for the first time in the current constitution, approved in 1978, and after much debate in the Spanish parliament. Although it was explicitly understood that the term made reference to Galicia, the Basque Country and Catalonia, the constitution does not specify any by name. The term came about as a consensus between the strong centralist position inherited from Franco's regime and the nationalist position mainly from the Basques, Galicians and Catalans. Once all nationalities and regions acceded to self-government or autonomy and were constituted as autonomous communities, the term was applied, in their respective statutes of autonomy, not only to define the three above-mentioned communities, but also Andalusia, the Balearic Islands and the Valencian community, and more recently Aragon and the Canary Islands. The rest of the autonomous communities are simply defined as regions of Spain, oftentimes as historical regions or as having a historical regional identity, in their respective statutes of autonomy. Historical communities are Asturias, Cantabria and Castile and Leon. Navarre and the Community of Madrid are special cases. Navarre is defined as a chartered community, in the reinstitution of its medieval charters, and the Community of Madrid is defined neither as a nationality nor as a region, but as a community created in the nation's interest as the seat of the capital of the nation. Historical background. The formation of Spain can be viewed as an alliance and progressive union of several peninsular kingdoms, and it can be said that the nationalist or regionalist tradition in Spain has its roots in Spanish history. In fact, no serious attempt was made to centralize the administration until the reforms of the 18th century. By the beginning of the 19th century, though, the Spanish government was heavily centralized and the state did not recognize the nation's regional diversity. It was also, later during this same century, that as Catalonia and the Basque Country became rapidly industrialized in areas where commercial capitalism made swift progress while the rest of the country followed at a much slower pace, nationalistic sentiments began to grow, and it was not unusual that some writers of the time would express their concepts of a Catalan or Basque fatherland or even nationhood. Both nationalist movements had much in common, in that both arose in areas that enjoyed higher levels of prosperity, were the only areas in the country to develop modern industry, and both possessed a linguistic tradition of their own. Both the Catalan and the Basque languages began to experience a strong revival, as was the case with the Galician language. Both regions rediscovered their histories. Catalonia rediscovered her prowess as a Mediterranean medieval empire within the Crown of Aragon, and the Basque Country focused on the mystery of its origins. Both areas had enjoyed some type of medieval charters whereby they had exercised either full autonomy, but not sovereignty, within the Spanish crown, or, in later times, as it was the case solely for the Basque Country and Navarre, they had enjoyed fiscal autonomy. The larger economic development occurring in areas overlapping spatially delimited ethnic communities enhanced the region's own identity, As nationalistic sentiments grew, sometimes within conservative ideals and afterwards with the left, the demands for self-government also grew, and in some sectors, separatism, outright independence, was preferred. The appearance of the so-called peripheral nationalism in the aforementioned regions of Spain occurred in a time where Spain itself as a whole first began to look into its own concept of nationhood, and where Spaniards began to study their own nationalism between two competing views, the traditionalist, where religion played a significant role in defining the Spanish nation, intrinsically and traditionally Catholic, and strongly monarchical, and the liberal view where sovereignty resided in the nation, the people, as opposed to the monarch, and where some advocated for a uniform centralized state while others preferred decentralization and even republicanism. Spain experimented with decentralization during the First Spanish Republic, but social and political chaos, which had started even before the change of regime with the change of monarchical houses, led to its failure. At the beginning of the 20th century, the two political discourses of Spanish nationalism, the traditional and the liberal, continued to be present and opposing, advocating for different political regimes. However, the appearance of peripheral nationalisms, namely the Basque and Catalan nationalistic movements, produced the unification many Spanish nationalists as a counterforce, and Spanish nationalism became a dialectical struggle between the center and the periphery. During the final stages of the Turno Pacifico, a staged Pacific alternation of power between liberals and conservatives in the Spanish parliament, Catalonia was granted a limited form of self-government, and the Commonwealth of Catalonia was established in 1913, with its own regional assembly. The assembly drafted a statute of autonomy that was, however, rejected by the general courts. The Commonwealth of Catalonia was dissolved during the dictatorship of Primo de Rivera in 1923. In 1931, the Second Spanish Republic was established, and a new liberal constitution allowed the regions of Spain to attain self-government, and created the autonomous region as a first-order administrative division. Catalonia was the first to approve a statute of autonomy, later sanctioned by the Spanish Parliament, and the Generalitat, the Catalan institutions of government that operated since medieval times until the early 18th century, was restored. The Basque Country and Galicia followed suit in 1936. But only the Statute of Autonomy of the first was approved before the Spanish Civil War erupted. After the war, centralism was most forcefully enforced during Franco's regime as a way to preserve the unity of the Spanish nation. His attempts to fight separatism with heavy-handed but sporadic repression and his oftentimes severe suppression of language and regional identities backfired. The demands for democracy became intertwined with demands for the recognition of a pluralistic vision of the Spanish nationhood. When Franco died, Spain entered into a phase of transition towards democracy, and all democratic groups were forced to face the Catalan, Basque and Galician question. On the 11th of September 1977, more than 1 million people marched in the streets of Barcelona demanding Libertat, Amnistia y Estatut de Autonomia, liberty, amnesty and a statute of autonomy, the biggest demonstration in post-war Europe. A decree law was passed that allowed for the creation of pre-autonomías, pre-autonomies, or provisional regional governments for all regions. The historical nationalities included. Catalonia was the first to be so constituted, reviving again the Generalitat. The Basque Country quickly followed suit. In the 1977 election to the first democratically elected parliament since the times of the Republic, regional Catalan socialists and Basque nationalists both won significant positions in representing their regions and their aspirations. This newly elected parliament was entrusted to formulate a new constitution, Nationalities, in the Constitution of 1978. The demands for the recognition of the distinctiveness of Catalonia, the Basque Country and Galicia within the Spanish state became one of the most important challenges for the newly elected parliament. In fact, the writing of the second article, in which the nationalities and regions of Spain were recognized, was the most hotly debated in the parliament. Its acceptance was not smooth. The right vigorously opposed it, while the nationalists and the left firmly objected, leaving it out. The natural corollary to debating the term nationalities was debating the term nation. At the end of the spectrum there were those who thought the term nationalities was unnecessary, or that there was only one nation and nationality, Spain, while at the opposite end of the spectrum there were those who advocated for defining Spain as a plurinational state, that is, a state integrated by several nations. In the end, the second article was passed along with the term nationalities, but firmly stressing the indivisible unity of the Spanish nation. It reads: "The Constitution is based on the indissoluble unity of the Spanish nation, the common and indivisible homeland of all Spaniards. It recognizes and guarantees the right to self-government of the nationalities and regions of which it is composed and the solidarity among them all." Second article of the Spanish Constitution of 1978. The article united two historical trends in Spain: centralism and federalism, and in the words of one of the seven fathers of the Constitution, Jordi Solé Tura, it was an authentic point of encounter between different concepts of the Spanish nation. In it, two great notions of Spain merge. It aimed to give an answer to the nationalistic aspirations that had been silenced during the 4 decades of Franco's dictatorial regime. The Constitution itself did not define the term, despite the diverse meanings and interpretations that its proponents and opponents had, ranging from an expression of historical and cultural identities in the superior unity of Spain, communities with a prominent cultural, historical or political personality, all the way to making it equivalent to nation, or defining it as a nation without a state, within the plurinational reality of Spain, as a nation of nations. The particular meaning that the term nationalities was to acquire in Spanish politics in reference to regions created some confusion with the concept of nationality in reference to citizenship, especially when the latter was defined in the 11th article of the Constitution. It was suggested that the term nationality be changed to citizenship in the 11th article, but it was considered that the terms nationality and citizenship are not completely synonymous, as it is common in other European legislations. The preamble to the Constitution explicitly stated that it is the nation's will to protect all Spaniards and the peoples of Spain in the exercise of human rights, their cultures and traditions, languages and institutions. This was a significant move, since for the historical nationalities, part of their distinctiveness lies on their own regional languages. Furthermore, the nation became openly multilingual, declaring Castilian, that is, Spanish, the official language of the entire country, but declaring that the other Spanish languages will also be official in their respective autonomous communities. The third article ends up declaring that the richness of the distinct linguistic modalities of Spain represent a patrimony which will the object of special respect and protection, the state of autonomies. The Constitution aimed to devolve self-government to both nationalities and regions, if the latter so desired, which were to be constituted as autonomous communities, yet making an implicit distinction between the two groups in the level of competences that were to be devolved, and in the way they were to attain self-government. The three historical nationalities were granted a simplified, fast-track process, while the rest of the regions had to follow a specific set of requirements. Thus the process was purposely intended to be asymmetrical in nature. The autonomous communities were to be formed from the existing provinces, a division of the centralizing regime of the early 19th century. An autonomous community could be created by a province or group of provinces with common historical, cultural and economical features. First, it did not specify the name or number of the autonomous communities that would integrate the Spanish nation, and secondly, the process was voluntary in nature. The regions themselves had the option of choosing to attain self-government or not. This unique process of territorial administration was called the state of autonomies. Though highly decentralized, this system is not a federation, in that there was still ambiguity with regards to the power attributed to the regions, even though they can still negotiate them with the central government. While the constitution was still being drafted, there was a demonstration in Andalusia, which sought to be recognized as a nationality, as well, and to be granted self-government also through a rapid process. This opened a phase that was dubbed in Spanish as Café para Todos, coffee for all, which meant that all regions would be served the same, that is, that all nationalities and regions would accede to self-government in roughly the same degree, even if at different paces. Catalonia, the Basque Country and Galicia acceded to autonomy via the fast-track route established in the 151st article of the Constitution, with all competences granted. Because in the past they had approved a statute by referendum and they had already established a pre-autonomic provisional government, Andalusia was able to take this route after a referendum in 1980. The rest had the opportunity to accede to autonomy via the slower route established by the 143rd article, with a lower level of competences during a provisional period of 5 years, after which there was to be a progressive transference of competences that would roughly equalize all communities. One particular exception was granted to both the Basque Country and Navarre in that their fueros or medieval charters that had granted them fiscal autonomy were restored, while Navarre, a province with a Basque-speaking minority, chose not to form part of the soon-to-be-formed autonomous community of the Basque Country. It followed a different route of devolution, precisely because of the reinstitution of the medieval charters, and it is nominally known as a chartered community, as opposed to an autonomous community.